All right, everyone, the Trump administration has finally decided to go after Silicon Valley a little bit, but I've got mixed feelings about this particular move. That is that they're going to investigate, specifically right now, Google, its search and so forth for antitrust violations. The idea is that Google has formed a vertical monopoly with other companies. They've consolidated together to prevent fair market competition. That's basically what this would amount to. And they clearly have. The problem is this. I don't really have a problem with a Silicon Valley or similar firm having a very, very large influence. Like Google has a huge influence. Search, most people use Google. Blogspot's a big thing. YouTube is the main video sharing platform for most of the world. You've got Youku down over in China, but they've got an internet. But by the way, Westerners can use it. A lot of pirated music there with strange subtitles and dubs on them. And that's basically, what you get. The communists have no problem with that because Western proprietary rights are not recognized. But if you were to put, a political video on there, beware. I wonder, could I get a Youku account and upload my videos there? Maybe they wouldn't have a problem with it. I never really talk about China that much. I guess they might not like my anti-socialistic content, though that might get me banned. So it'd be really interesting. It's like you get banned everywhere now. But it's quite clear that they're a vertical monopoly, a trust. It's fairly straightforward. That being said, though, I don't really have a problem with that as long as there's no censorship. I don't care if a firm has 100% of the market share as long as they're not abusing people. If anyone conforming under U.S. law to the principles thereof is on the platform and is allowed to be there, I don't really care about them making money hand over fist. Why would I care? I mean, if I don't even care if they charge you a monthly fee or something, I would be willing to pay it, and it would be fine. And if people weren't willing, then some other competitor would crop up. Therein lies the problem, though. The problem is that Google and Amazon and some of these companies have engaged in practices, partially in coordination with one another, it seems, to preclude competitors. And there's another way in which this works. For instance, you think of Google search. They manipulate their algorithms with regards to news results, things like that. They would say we fix the results to prevent problems or to knock down hateful content. I would say they manipulate them. Because they take ad money from legacy media groups, and because they platform them, is it not a conflict of interest and definitely a monopolistic and possibly already illegal practice under existing U.S. law for them to fuck over those same groups' competitors? That would be like saying, okay, they got a bunch of money. Here you have a communications firm. It's engaged with the communications realm. It's got kind of a vertical monopoly going on. Let's say that Chevy pays them a bunch of money and all of a sudden Ford ads get knocked down in the algorithms or something. I would think that would get them investigated. They'd probably get sued. Ford would sue them and the U.S. government would sue them. It would be a bad behavior that we don't allow. The thing is, a lot of people say, well, a free market, the Silicon Valley firms are allowed to censor and ban whoever they want and do whatever they want. Kind of. That's the way it's presented, but they haven't even chosen whether they're a public platform or whether they're publishers yet. Thus, potentially, in the latter case, opening them up to all sorts of lawsuits based just on content they've already got. I'll tell you what I think. I think they don't want to make that differentiation yet. I think that they want to develop AI enough to police 100% of content without any further ado from human beings, and once they do that, they'll declare themselves publishers, and then they'll micromanage all of the world's informational structure. Then they'll be able to do it because by then Congress will be incapable of stopping them. They'll be too monopolistic. So this is the first volley in trying to stop that. But here's what I would say. I don't want them investigated for monopolistic activity. I don't care if they're monopoly. All I want them to do is be declared platforms and conform to an Internet Bill of Rights. That's the ultimate goal, should be to develop a binding Internet Bill of Rights that protects the rudiments, at least for U.S. citizens. It protects intellectual property. It protects people from getting banned off of these monopolistic platforms for things that would be otherwise legal under U.S. law. That is, here's why you can get banned. You have defamed somebody, and that would be found legally speaking. You've defamed somebody, that is, you're attacking their brand or whatever in a malicious manner. You're causing damage to another person based on lies, something like that. Mischaracterization of them as a person. You are making a credible threat. I'm not talking about saying, well, I want to kill X, Y, and Z. That's not a credible threat. I'm talking about legitimate credible threat. You're posting illegal content, like certain illicit porn or something like that. or spam, which isn't a form of speech or expression. It's actually disruptive, and it's basically, spam is the equivalent of if I take a megaphone and go to some other person's speaking event and I shout over them to prevent them from speaking. The left likes to do this. I'm surprised they haven't weaponized spam more than they already have, because they don't have anything good to say for themselves, so they try to keep others from speaking because they can't debate. They can't argue against the truth very easily, so they try to shut down all conversation. These are the same freaks and weirdos that like the fact that billionaires right now are trying to burn books in the digital era. I think as long as we eliminate the censorship and so forth, no, I don't really care how much money Google makes. You know, you want to more ads or whatever, you want to charge people subscription fees, I don't really give a fuck. I don't care what they do money-wise. Let them make money, Hannah. They're a U.S. business anyway. The only other thing is they shouldn't have these tax havens and workaround strategies so that they end up paying nothing back into the U.S. economy. Then they get subsidized further by the state of California invariably. Now they basically use a bunch of... Why are they getting federal funds? Some of that federal money is arguably going... People in other states are being forced to pay blood money to California in order to keep those companies in California so they can't compete. If I were in Silicon Valley, I'd think about moving to Texas, though, at this point. I think it'd be cheaper, considering the tax rates there. They definitely need the subsidies. But, yeah... So, I mean, it's good to go after the Silicon Valley firms because they're not behaving properly. They're totally... The concept of free speech goes beyond the First Amendment. They're violating that routinely. The concept of privacy, Facebook especially goes against that completely. The spirit of these ideas in the philosophical sense, I mean. Now, that's quite clear. And they are monopolistic. They're trusts. That being said, I don't have a problem with that if the other problems are cleared up. Let them be monopolistic. That's okay as long as they're conforming to basic, stringencies, basic behavior that would promote the idea of liberty. I mean, they're U.S. firms. They should have U.S. ideals. That should be ultimately the goal. And they shouldn't have to be forced. They shouldn't have changed the way they were doing business 5 years ago anyway. All these people, if you listen to them 5-10 years ago, they sounded like they just came off a Ron Paul conference. Now, if politics was a sport, they're playing in the Special Olympics, I guess, as far as their philosophy goes. And it's not tenable long term. Eventually, they'll get into a dust-up with the government, or with other firms, or with the EU or something, and things will go to hell. We'll have to have a totally separate internet. We would literally have to develop a second infrastructure that would basically be a second internet in order to escape the censorship, in order to escape the monopolistic tech firms. By then, these groups will... it's 10,000 times worse than the robber barons. It's 10,000 times worse than the sort of trusts and monopolies you had in the Gilded Era. And by the way, you should study that period of time if you want to understand why Silicon Valley is acting the way it is today. Just look at roughly how long these bigger firms have been around. Look at how long those steel and rail and coal and so forth barons were around, able to establish themselves before. Look at the number of firms there are and look at how they cooperated and what their market share was. Then look at the practices they engage in. It's the same fucking shit. People who criticize censorship are routinely banned under mysterious circumstances. There's a reason for that. That should be a violation of antitrust, anti-monopoly laws under U.S. law that already exists. It doesn't require an expansion of law. It just requires Congress to get off its ass and consult people who are young content creators who know what they're talking about, as opposed to cloistering themselves in a behind-closed-doors meeting with Zuckerberg, who's going to lie to them, never get put under oath anyway because he's bought half the Senate. That's the problem. That's about all. Peace out.